We never established who should greet the people this week. I just realized that. We didn't say, do you want to do the opener? Should I do the opener? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Show. I'm Jimmy Snow. I'm here with Matt Dillahunty. We are here to take calls about theism, religion, atheism.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Show. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I'm here with Jimmy Snow. We're here to take calls. Oh, shit. We confused all that.
That was good. That was solid. And we're going to try something. We've made some swipe. Earlier this week, we were having some issues with the call-in system. I think and I hope for the people who are calling in, we should have all of that cleared up. So if you call in, it shouldn't be breaking out. We're hoping. My suspicion is this time of year, the system that we're using is overloaded by people using it, and they aren't ready to handle it. But maybe that's not the issue, and so we're trying something else in case it isn't the issue. But we'll be switching to a new call-in system hopefully in January anyway, once they have the features all lined up. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I had minor issues. I had to cancel last Wednesday for a couple of different reasons, but I'm feeling better overall. I'm looking forward. I've got Phil Ferguson's going to be on Hang Up on Wednesday, and then Aron's going to be on the Wednesday after that to do the Snake Show, and then Dave Warnock will be on the Wednesday after that, which is January 4th. So, I mean, I've booked a whole month's worth of guests, or you also helped book some guests there as well. And then we're going to get Mandisa on again to make up for me canceling her on Wednesday. Yeah. I'm up to 26 snakes, 1 Euromastix, 2 cats, 3 bearded dragons, and a couple hundred rats, and a bunch of isopods. So, yeah, I went to another reptile convention this weekend, and we rescued some bearded dragons.
I had amazing plans for this last weekend, all of which got destroyed because my car broke. And hopefully tomorrow morning it will unbreak. I'm told it'll be tomorrow morning, but I've also was told a lot of things this weekend that were supposed to go a lot faster. So I think tomorrow morning I will have an unbroken car, and I will be trying to make up for some of those things, perhaps this following week, going to Houston where gaps allow. Don't miss Shannon Q tomorrow on Skeptalk. She's going to do a solo psychology-themed episode of Skeptalk. That's going to be awesome. In the meantime, we have at least one caller waiting on the line already. We do have some lines open. If you are an atheist and you have a question about, leaving religion or trying to have better conversations with religious people, you can call. If you are a theist, you have a religious belief, we'd love to hear why you hold that religious belief, and see what we think about your reasoning, because we're very interested in the truth, and maybe you can convert us on the spot. That'd be so wonderful if that were to happen. However, let's hear from some theists today. If you've got some friends and family too that you think that they would benefit from such conversations, don't blindside them. Tell them what they're in for, but just say, hey, there's this show. You're always telling me that my atheism is stupid. These people, they talk about it for a living. Why don't you call them and see if what they think of your arguments of our atheism being stupid is. It's a good little time. But we'll go ahead and jump into calls here, unless you have anything else you want to hit before we do.
No, but now when you're talking about your unbreak your car, I keep that old Tony Braxton song of "Unbreak My Heart" is going through my head, and I just rewrote it for you. No, I don't have anything else that's pressing. I really hope, because I did a debate the other night, last night actually, and I know that I will. I know I'll be posting both the debate because he begged me to. He desperately. I think he's got some sort of kink where he wants to be publicly humiliated and shamed, because that's kind of what happened on Friday night. And then he was like, you're afraid to post this on your channel. And I was like, no, I've got to deal with modern day debates where I don't post them, but I share them via Patreon. But I asked for permission, and so I'll be posting that on there along with the debate review. It's probably going to go down as one of the 2 or 3 worst debaters I've been up against. It was just, it's not the worst, but it's really, really, really bad.
I was just gonna say, is Dunning-Kruger any more on display than online debates? I feel like that too. The worse the debater is, the more they're sure they absolutely like defeated every. Otangelo thinks he's beaten every atheist there is.
Yeah, this was worse than actually Otangelo, and it was like, oh, the atheists are here to do damage control when no damage had been done. And I wrote a closing, but we didn't do closings. There was no proper back and forth. He wanted during the discussion part, he talks for 2 minutes, I talk for 2 minutes. He talks for so he did that for like an hour. After he warned me before the debate, he's like, I hope you've stayed up on your science because I'm going to go after you like nobody else has ever done it before. It was absolute bravado from before we started, and then lied repeatedly about the silliest things, like, oh, he's a big fan of mine and he's watched dozens of my debates. Well, actually only one about God. Well, actually this one about slavery and this one about, I mean, it's like he couldn't make up his mind about anything that was true. I don't want to do the whole debate review now. We got callers. Let's get the show on the road.
I'm going to give it a shot. I want to say that this name is probably Vaclav. You could tell me how to pronounce it if I'm missing
Václav.
One more time.
Václav with C.
Vaclav. I think that's the best I've got. Can I call you V?
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
Cool.
Anyway, welcome. How are you doing?
Well, today it's actually fine. Lots of study, but that will be okay.
Yeah. Well, what did you call in about?
Oh, it's maybe it's just stupid, but still it's bothering me for a while. Maybe as you know, I am atheist, but I'm atheist very freshly, and I'm still deconstructing a lot of things about my previous religion. I used to be a Catholic for roughly 11 years, and I actually stumbled to some arguments from the miracles. Personally, I think that most of those arguments are pretty weak because in most cases we aren't able to verify if those things are actually true because of lacks of evidence and materials and so on. But then roughly 3 weeks ago, someone of my friends from the church presented me the Eucharistic miracles. And I mean those situations when the host or is literally and physically turned into the presumably body of Christ. So and there are several occurrences around the world, and most fresh, which actually concerning me the most, are from Poland from 2009 and 2013 in Sokolka and Legnica. I am not sure if this is a good pronunciation. And in both, and the story is usually always the same. The host is it's fall on the ground, so it's dirty. So it's put into the water, into the dish with the holy water, and then it should dissolve. But sometimes there appears something red or something which resembles body tissue or blood, and it's considered to be the real body of Christ. And what actually bothered me about these instances is that it's actually always it's something which is actually testable or physical and measurable, and it was in each instances put to the test as the church claims, and to test to pathologists, and they claim that they found the heart tissue and fragments of human DNA in these specimens in both instances. Now I'm speaking about Poland. And I was just wondered if you guys heard about this, and what is your opinion about these things?
Oh, I think Jimmy's muted.
Sorry. Do you want to go first?
Well, I've heard claims like this all the time. I don't know how you demonstrate what happened? This thing was never under test conditions. How do you rule out that it's a fraud?
Well, that's actually this is actually what's bothered me. I mean, I was able to found these two studies from Poland, but I mean, it was very quiet on the internet about these things. I mean, among the scientists, and it took me for a while when I was able to even found these things. So, but both of them seems to be quite a little bit legit, at least.
What do you mean it seems to be legit? So if there were studies that showed an actual Eucharist miracle, you don't think that would be up for a Nobel Prize? You don't think that would be in every scientific journal? You don't think you would? Why would you have to dig to find a Eucharist miracle? If the scientific study is legit and good, why did you have to go searching for it? Why isn't it front page news everywhere?
Well, that's actually what concerning me the most. I mean, the most studies what I was able to really found about this was actually about the social impact and theological questions about this, but not those two actual studies. And they are in the Polish language, and I actually wasn't able to read them because I'm not the Polish speaker. I am relying only on the abstract, which was quite, let's say, bogus. But I don't know. Maybe it's for me. It's maybe a little bit the argument from authority. But on the other hand, it was done on the, let's say, reliable institutions. I mean, the Polish universities. I have to admit that in one case it was unofficial, as the university admit. I think it was from 2009. But from 2013, I wasn't able to find anything that it was unofficial or strongly biased by faith of the researchers.
So I found the 2013 story, and the thing that I find, like, if you're going to approach things with skepticism, you have to break down each instance of where the claims basically come in. And I don't know where that computer sound was, if that was my end or your end. But you have to, and so what you have here is a story that during communion, the host was dropped on the floor, right?
Yes.
And then it was placed in a container of holy water, and it was left in a container of holy water for 2 weeks. So we've got already this set of, there is allegedly this sample, this thing that dropped on the floor, and for 2 weeks, you're meant to, I suppose, believe that it's been left untouched. And I'm just reading the story, and I'm going to let I'm just going to assume for the sake of argument that the base facts are true, right? Like that the initial thing happened, this thing dropped on the floor, and then it was preserved in holy water, which I don't know if that's the normal ritual they go through. But then after 2 weeks of this thing not dissolving in holy water, the sample is sent off to a lab, and the lab verifies that the Forensic Institute verifies that this is flesh. Now, apparently they don't do any sort of DNA research on it, because the DNA of Jesus, being a man without a mother or a man without a father, would be incredible. It would be something like no one had even seen.
If God can miracle a baby from a virgin, he can miracle the DNA so that it's not incredible.
Okay, well, yeah. It seems to me likely it would be incredible, but you're right, as far as how magical the whole thing exists. But it would seem you would see some unique stuff, but they're not doing any DNA testing on it. What we're meant to think is that after 2 weeks, this sample that eventually ends up in a lab is the same thing that dropped on the floor, was simply put into holy water, and then was confirmed to be human flesh, and apparently that's where all of the experimenting and the verification ends. And there's a whole lot of places that those individual aspects drop off. And so it becomes the simple question of what right now seems more likely, because this wasn't a heavily controlled experiment. The only place you can say the control eventually comes in, as long as there's no, as long as it's being done in a normal scientific way, is once the sample is being tested, we give the benefit of the doubt that that's being done accurately. All of that stuff leading up to then, which one is more likely that somebody is a liar and is providing a sample of human flesh of some kind, or that a bit of bread, or whatever the bready thing is they call the host, actually turned into human flesh? I've seen lots of examples of liars. We've never seen a controlled experiment that can accomplish the other one.
When Jimmy points out that this wasn't a controlled experiment, I mean, dropping on the floor is your first thing. But let's assume that everything that is said to take place took place, that everything's been reported correctly. And so what you have is a Eucharist that, upon investigation, has turned into human flesh. If that's true, and it would be sufficient to demonstrate a miracle and the existence of God, then where's the study that takes 100 Eucharists and puts them in proper scientific controlled environments and has people pray and perform the Eucharist ceremony over them? And then we determine that all of those turn into human flesh. I'd be impressed if you took 100 Eucharists and under controlled scientific controls, managed to get any of them to turn into human flesh. And if this is something that actually happens, that is a result of prayer, that is actual evidence that people are going to use to say is compelling for God, then it should be very, very, very easy to do this and make it work under proper test conditions. And yet we don't see that.
Well, what I registered when I actually read some articles read by the Christians is that there is actually the backlash against this approach, and the church is spawning the phrases like the faith won't be humbled by the science, and
those are all convenient excuses, but that should tell you that this is bullshit.
Well, yeah.
If something is real and true, it has nothing to fear from inquiry or testing. The only time anybody has anything to fear from testing is if they're a fraud. If it's, if they know it's a fraud. So that should be even stronger evidence that this is a load of crap.
Yes, but I can imagine the theist to say that the have a faith is the better because it was said by the Jesus Christ to the unbelieving Thomas, so we will provide you rather faith than actual evidence, which is actually what I hate, because it's actually leaving me in very inconvenient state, because I don't want to have a faith.
Why is it? Why are you left in an inconvenient? No. Why are you left in an inconvenient state? Because anybody says, "Oh, faith is better than evidence," is an idiot who's trying to prop up something that's not true. If it's true, you don't need faith. If there's evidence for it, you don't need faith. Faith is the excuse people give when they don't have a good reason. And if this thing were true and happening, I guarantee you, if they could actually reproduce this, they would allow testing in a heartbeat. The reason they won't allow testing is because they know they cannot reproduce this.
Well, Matt, actually, this is supported what happened in 2009, when actually the university offered another testing of even the same specimen, and it was denied by the church because it's the real Jesus, and we have to prove some respect and so on. So maybe you are right. I'm sorry, but I am a little bit afraid that I'm strongly biased against the religion and against the church. So this is actually what I am calling to verify how to think about this particular proof.
As I deconstructed, one of the things that quickly became the most frustrating to me was this idea that there would be religions who offer this sort of concept of, we have for you the greatest truth, the truth that is truer than truth. And I couldn't wrap my head around that any organization with such a claim of having all of that truth would ever be worried about a person doubting, experimenting, scrutinizing anything. Mormonism, I got out of Mormonism long before Dieter Uchtdorf did his talk about how if you're going to be a doubter, maybe the first thing you should do is doubt your doubts, as the church was hemorrhaging members because the CES letter came out and there was all of this like, oh, here's like an itemized list of why the church isn't true. And rather than they be able to take on these actual scientific experiments or scientific thoughts, instead of actually taking them on and trying to battle in the world of truth the way you see actual organizations trying to reveal reality to people do, they go with this like, well, if you're having doubts and you think it's so great to doubt, then why aren't you doubting your doubts? They want to play these word games instead. And this very much comes up to that same level of like, well, listen, if you were to further test it, you would be trying to turn your back on faith, which is a virtue. You don't want to believe this on faith anymore, which is what God says. You want to believe this with some higher standard of truth, when even if you proved that this was somehow human flesh from a man who lived 2,000 years ago, and there was a lot of good reason to believe it is Jesus Christ, there's still plenty of gaps that faith would have to fill in, though that would be an impressive thing. And they can't do it, and they won't do it. And if they thought it was so important for most of the world to believe this shit, they would do it. If it was important to them that as many people get to heaven because they believe in God as possible, they would prove their religion is true every step of the way that they could. And instead, they don't, because that isn't what is important. It's about keeping believers believing. And you can't do that when you don't build your religion on actual facts.
Yeah, I get it. You found a couple of studies. It's, it looks like somebody else is taking it seriously. And people should take claims like this seriously until we're at a point where those claims are made over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and there's never good evidence under proper test conditions to demonstrate anything remotely like truth. There's an entire organization called the Templeton Foundation, whose primary purpose is they are a religiously motivated organization. They did a study on intercessory prayer, and it's instead of intercessory prayer demonstrating that it was effective, it demonstrated the exact opposite, that it worked at the rate of chance and was worse if the person who being prayed for knew that they were being prayed for. This is, I get it. It's potentially irritating and confusing to have, oh, look, somebody did a study and it shows this. But if this were true, this would be the biggest news ever. You wouldn't have had to hunt for a study a decade old. It wouldn't be just a few places in Poland where this was happening. I don't know what the significance of Poland is. Maybe Poland has sloppier scientific studies. Maybe they have more people who are gullible. But in any case, none of this rises to the level of demonstrating the truth of the claims.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, well, there are even some refuttals of this study, and skeptics actually pointed out that it could be a fungi. That's because, I mean, it looks similar under the microscope, like the hair tissue, which was supposedly found in those samples. But for me, it's a little bit maybe it's for me a little bit hard to swallow that some of those scientists, I mean, pathologists, could get it wrong repeatedly. But maybe I am just too naive.
The thing that was honestly almost funny to me is that supposedly, now I'm reading the version of the story from the heavily biased source, but supposedly it was identified with heart tissue, which resembled heart tissue that had undergone the changes that the stress of a death struggle caused. And in any like reasonable person's mind, if you literally found, hey, we found this heart tissue in this location and it looks like it struggled before death, the answer to that should be opening a police investigation and sequencing the DNA and seeing if you can find out who it belongs to and make sure that you haven't had somebody murdered in the back of the church. Now, like you said, it could have been fungus. It also could be, as far as that stress heart thing goes, that may have just been an added in, made up detail, as I'm very familiar with religious institutions doing, where they sort of extrapolate these things and make them more interesting than they usually actually are.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's kind of like you and I could probably come up with 24 things, 24 reasons here in the next 10 minutes why this could look like this and be something else. But the point isn't all the things it could be, it's what things couldn't it be. And so far, I have yet to ever see an example of, like Matt was saying, a Eucharist miracle in a controlled environment actually be demonstrated. I don't have a good reason to ever believe that it even can happen, let alone that it has happened. And so any of those 24 examples we would come up with would be infinitely more likely to be the explanation as they've been demonstrated to be possible.
Well, actually, yeah, and those another explanations are in line with the model of work which we have and which was actual, and for what we have much more evidence than for God. I mean, in line in the natural world. Yeah.
True.
I think one of the things, and I can understand why you do this and why other people do this, it's tempting to do, and I'll just leave you with this thought, is you seem to almost be calling us to see, hey, can you guys debunk this? And that's putting the burden of proof in the wrong area, because they haven't demonstrated anything yet. And if the onus becomes, oh, can you debunk this? You're shifting the burden of proof and without any justification. First, they got to demonstrate that there's a there. And then we should do more studies. And then we should get more positive results. And then we should attempt to falsify those and submit in a peer review. None of that is in anywhere in the ballpark of, hey, somebody claimed a Eucharist turned into a human being and there's a study on it. Can you debunk it? It's like the debate that I had last night. This guy was trying to point out everywhere where he thinks that the Quran is word for word scientifically accurate with what science understands now, and wanted me to debunk that point. That point's irrelevant to whether or not Islam is true. It doesn't matter if the Quran got every piece of science right. That doesn't tell you how or why. You have to have all your work in front of you to prove that it's because there's a God that was giving information to people.
Okay, thank you. I mean, maybe debunking is more funny, but yeah, I understand to your point, and I think it's helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah. By the way, I want to thank you, Matt, for what you are doing. Actually, I mean, you have gave me a lot of source and material to reconstruct my religion and my way of thinking before. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm glad it was helpful.
I mean, it's like a very big library of a lot of specimen of arguments of what the people normally think. So it was much quicker with you. Thank you.
Cool.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See you later, Vaclav. Or V, I said I'd call you. See ya. Oh, sorry. I'd already hit the hang up as I was saying see you later. Yeah, I'm just not there's also the question of these people who are like, well, if I investigate it too far and then there's no faith element to it, it loses its grandeur because it's not faith-based. Well, then how do we decide which faith-based beliefs to choose? There's no way to do this, and there's no way to justify that your religion is more true than another religion, even as they all claim to have the most truth, if you can't put anything to the test, because that would undermine the religiousness. Anyway, I think we have at least, it might be right now, yeah, we have at least one line open for another theist, if a theist would like to call. If you have a religious belief, we want to know why it is. It doesn't have to be limited to Christianity. It can be Islam. It can be Hinduism. It can be whatever. Honestly, I'd take somebody who wants to defend astrology, because I put out a lot of challenges on the internet and no one ever wants to call in and defend that astrology is true. I'd happily take that call. Bring it on.
I think we destroyed astrology with that little horoscope thing that we had Seth reading for me, you, and Owen.
That thing was awesome. That was an awesome. I'll have to repost it at some point, or maybe do a follow-up experiment and see. Because there were lots of people like, well, you should have gotten this version of it done. That wasn't like, that's just a Fiverr horoscope. So of course it was not the right authority.
That's so wild.
Yep. All right, we have a theist on the line, wants to go by Wild Man Chris, which is an interesting name, from North Carolina, who believes that he needs to believe in Christianity because of people who mysteriously died for believing it. That's an interesting.
Died for not believing it.
Where people are mysterious for not believing it. I see. Yeah, Wild Man Chris,
what's going on?
I want to hear this.
Hey, how you doing? Trying to make some songs, but I got some stuff that's really bothering my mind.
Okay.
This part of there's this man named J. Harold Smith. I got.
And Wild Man disconnected. Oh, wait. No, it says you're still there. Wild Man, can you hear us? Wild Man. Dun, dun. That's what I was thinking too. All right, we're gonna put Chris back into the queue. Oh no, Chris terminated. All right, hopefully he tries to call back here.
It was interesting because he was calling about J. Harold Smith. Yeah, and so I hope he calls back, because Smith was a Southern Baptist, and there's some interesting stuff about him. I barely remembered the name and had to look it up as soon as he said it, but yeah.
We will talk to you, but we still have lines open. Call in if you believe in God. We want to know why you believe in God, if you believe in any sort of spiritual belief or whatever. But we'll talk to Taryn in Arizona. Taryn in Arizona, you are on the line. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
I'm peachy.
All right.
The last time I talked, I got you to switch your hat out about 6 or 7 times, which I think puts me closer to getting you back to Christianity than any other caller before you. But so I was.
If switching a hat is on the path to Christianity, then I might be a saint.
I don't know. My old roommate was baptized in his father's sink, so apparently it doesn't take much.
But so yeah,
I
was talking to someone last night. Pretty good. I was talking to someone last night who I'm probably not going to talk to again because he started defending slavery. But I got him to the point where I made him admit that you don't know what is divinely written in the Bible and what is written by humans. So I asked him, how do you know? How could you prove, or what's the point of believing in Christianity if you can't tell what is the Word of God and what is just some human giving his own personal opinions? And he just pretty much broke it down to, well, I believe it because I want to believe it. I kind of got stumped there because I couldn't push the conversation any further.
So is your question where we would take that?
Yeah, exactly. Because, I got to that point where he just kind of is like, oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore, so I'm just going to end it with this. Because, I brought it to the point where I brought up the point on the very first page where the order of creation goes against how science works in the beginning, to begin with. And so I just kind of broke out a couple obvious flaws that a all-knowing being or all possibly knowing being could ever get right or ever get wrong. And it was just like, this is not the work of a all-knowing being. Why should you believe anything else written in this book if these are obviously wrong? And it just kind of got to the point where, well, this is right, and it's just he missed the point.
You want to go first?
Well, so as soon as somebody tells you that they're done, then you're pretty much done. But if they say they believe something because they want to, if they say they believe something because they want to, then that shifts the conversation. You find out, okay, why do you want to believe this? Because I want to believe things that are true and demonstrable. I don't want to believe things just because they make me feel good or because they're popular or because I wish they were true. And so even if you just say, oh, I just want to believe it, I mean, there has to be something that motivates you. And you have to also want to believe this and not want to believe other claims. For example, the claim that this particular claim doesn't have supporting evidence that makes it worthy of belief. This is why I've for years kept asking people, do you actually care if your beliefs are true or if they're comforting? And for the people who are like, no, I don't care if they're true, I only care if they're comforting, we can no longer talk about that subject. We have to have a different conversation about how many other things are they willing to believe just because they're comforting? Are they carving out a special place just for religion? Or are they the type of person that just runs around life divorced from reality, believing whatever feels good because it feels good? That's the conversation I think has to happen next.
Yeah, generally the conversation I take it is sort of similar, but usually from that place I would take it to I'll start bringing up other religions, because usually, for example, if you're talking to a Christian, you can get them to concede, like, would you agree that Islam is, if it's not true, it's harmful for people to believe? And most of them will concede yes. And so I'll take it from there and just be like, all right, so let's say I meet a Muslim or you meet a Muslim and you know their religion isn't true, but they can't see that even if it isn't true, it's still at least comforting, and they tell you the exact same thing. I still want to believe it because of what I get out of it or whatever the reason is. How would you try to get through to that Muslim? And in this reality, I'm not trying to win an argument at this point. I'm trying to ask them a question that's going to bother them for the next week. That's basically it. It's when you walk away from here, you're going to try to avoid this topic now because you've already tried to shut it down, and I'm going to try and make it creep into your head. Because those are the things that honestly changed my mind. I had lots of walls up and lots of blocks up, and then there were just these little things that ate at it. And then one day I gave myself permission to actually consider those things, and that was the last day I believed.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I got to that point, it was just completely stumped because he pretty much said, well, I just want to believe. So I was like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. That mine was a pretty quick call, so I'm going to end it here. But thank you guys. Have a good one.
Well, wait, before you go, Taryn, I wouldn't suggest you not talk to that person again, because you said that you're not going to ever talk to him again because he was going to defend biblical slavery.
Well, he's done some other. He's tried to persuade my voting to vote for Carrie Lake, and he's just like he's not a very pleasant person. I mean, sure. Like last night was like the last chance I was giving him to begin with.
And for the record, if truly you don't like who you are around that person, you don't like the way he talks to people around you, if there's a social reason or psychological reason you feel like separating yourself will make your life improve, or you'll feel safer, or you won't worry about other people as much, for sure that's a totally different consideration. I just want to say, in reaction to when you initially said, so we'll now make it a more hypothetical, I'm not going to speak to him anymore because he defended biblical slavery. There is a big culture right now, I feel, of separating yourself away from the people who don't believe like you, and I super do not support it. I am the person who changed from a homophobic conservative to the socialist queer man I am today because of the patience of people who had better beliefs than me and who would be around me even though I was bigoted toward their existence at times. So, yeah.
I completely agree with you. It's just that, like, the last time I talked with him, he just ranted at me for an hour about why I didn't vote for Carrie Lake and how I'm a sheep. And it's just like, well, I don't.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, if you can't get a word in edgewise, I get it.
I can understand.
Last night was like. Go ahead, Matt.
I just want to let her. I was going to let you finish.
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, by all means, you get to decide when you are and aren't going to be participating in conversation with somebody, and if they're just ridiculous, etc. But considering I don't know how often you're going to get that sort of reply, so I don't know how much our answer is going to be useful to you. If you do wind up talking to this person again, maybe a better way to start is to say, hey, the last couple times we've tried to have a conversation, whether it was about religion or politics or whatever else, it didn't end well. Maybe this next time, we either just don't talk about this stuff, or we have a different conversation, which is what do each of us care about, and how do we go about finding out whether or not something's true? Because if you're going to say, oh, you didn't vote for Carrie Lake, you're correct. I didn't vote for Carrie Lake, but that's because I have maybe we both want a better world, but we have a different idea of what the better world is and a different way of telling what's true, because you accept religious things as true that I don't. So you clearly have a different, path to truth than I do. So what is that? And you can kind of, I know he's just probably just going to say again, hey, I believe because I want to believe. But you can have that meta level conversation, and you can avoid the specifics of the politics and the religion stuff, because I don't know that there's any way forward on that until you come to terms with how can both of us agree on whether or not something is true. Anything, is this pencil I'm holding real? That's that sort of thing. You may have to dip down that far.
All right. Thanks for the advice, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. I noticed on the call list that the last time she called was when Andrew was on to talk about SCOTUS stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to get Andrew back on to talk about SCOTUS stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I know Andrew because we've got some projects we want to do with Andrew on Skeptalk too. I know he's just been insane. He's one of the people we like having the most, and it's probably all the things that he's doing that makes him hardest to book is why we want to have him the most. He's great. Do you have a preference on the call list there?
I do not.
I think we'll take. I actually find because I sort of put the challenge out there, though I don't think they're calling in defense. But we'll talk to Eric in Chicago. Eric in Chicago, you are on the line.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Just fine. How are you?
Good, Eric, how are you?
Good. Great show. I always tune in as much as possible.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you all, what's your thoughts on like spiritism? I work with a lot of people from different cultures and different regions of the country, and they sometimes they say that they have like these witchcraft and voodoo practices and different things of that nature. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I have never seen any good evidence for anything supernatural at all. And I don't know, even if you found something that was extraordinary, like we verified that something happened and we don't have an explanation for it. If we don't have an explanation for it, that means we don't know what it is. And I don't know how somebody could reasonably say, oh, this is in fact supernatural, because that to me means that they're trying to claim omniscience and the ability to rule out all potential naturalistic explanations, including ones they've never heard of, thought of, and have no way to investigate. And so when I hear people basically saying, oh, I mean, we've tested, the James Randi Educational Foundation had a test for years, and we've tested over and over again. Nobody ever passed the preliminary test, whether they were a psychic or a dowser, whether they were claiming to talk to the dead or engaging in voodoo or being able to do remote viewing or astral projection. All of these things have been repeatedly tested. And the one time that we can point to where people with proposed powers like this were tested by scientists, and the scientists were ready to conclude that they did in fact have these powers, was Project Alpha, which was James Randi putting two magicians up to actually attempt to fool the scientists. So that's the closest anybody's come to demonstrating scientifically anything supernatural. And it was an intentional fraud put up by Randi to teach the scientists that they were not qualified or equipped to investigate this, that you needed magicians, you needed people who were skilled in fooling people or knowing how people fool themselves to test this. And until that changes, until there's some sort of reasonable scientific confirmation of any supernatural claim, not only do I have no reason to believe it, but I have a pretty good reason to think that since every time we've explored it, it's turned out to be not real, that's probably going to continue to be the trend. Yeah,
I remember when I was learning about certain basic concepts that now seem like obvious, and something like children should understand what confirmation bias is. Barnum statements.
Right,
Oh, these
right.
are obvious. These sorts of things that are now to a lot of skeptics and atheists seem so primary and elementary to all of us are actually like really far out tough concepts for people who still believe. If you try to talk to a person who deeply believes in astrology or psychics and explain to them the concept of cold reading versus hard reading, Barnum statements and the like, you just see their walls of panic that go up, and they'll often become very emotional and sort of I've had these conversations a bunch of times, and it's very interesting to me that if you just ask a person about their experience with a psychic who believes in psychics, you will hear about this tremendous experience. And, she knew what kind of candles I had in my pantry. How could she have known that? that sort of stuff. But then when you actually put it to the test and you send anybody to any number of these extremely impressive psychics, you notice they're doing the stuff that you expect them to do. And you hear them making the types of statements that are dishonest at best, because you can't tell whether or not they believe or not that they actually are a psychic, or if they have this sort of natural or learned intuition regarding cold versus hot reading and all the like. And it all falls apart the moment of investigation. And then you start to hear excuses about, well, if I'm a psychic and you come with a cynical spirit, you attract cynical demons who are going to fool me, which is why I was able to fool a psychic in a different series. Matt was talking about our astrology one. I did a different one with Fiverr Psychics where she was telling me about my long lost twin sister is safe. She's thinking about making a career change. She might be unhappy in her marriage, but she sees that they're going to work it out. I don't have a long lost twin sister. I don't have a twin sister at all. But I had sent the cynical, dishonest demons. Well, that's true. I did trust my parents when they say I don't.
I mean, it's just a lot of, like I said, it's a lot of different cultures. And I don't want to come off as just being, ignorant or just belligerent, because I'm like, I've never had those experiences. I'm not just going to, throw somebody underneath the bus. I don't have that type of personality or whatever. It is, I just listen. And then there's a few other people that said this Owaspy Bible by John Newborough, and he was doing automatic writing, and he was underneath a trance. And I'm like, well, how can you really test some of these things, and, a spirit came and moved his hands to write on a typewriter to come up with a Owaspy Bible. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Owaspy.
The Waspy?
No, I'm not.
Owaspy, Oahspe, Owaspy.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a movement that's it's not really big, but this gentleman who I work with, he said, when he told me, I was stunned, because I had always grew up in the church, for years, and had my deconversion process, but I was like, where in the hell did this come from? And he was telling me about this guy in the 1800s, and maybe you guys should look into it, but, that's basically what I wanted to ask, because everybody has these grand claims, and I'm like, bro, I was in the Pentecostal movement and the tongues movement, and it's basically a farce.
Yeah.
So how do you tell who's telling the truth or not?
So when you said Owaspy Bible, I thought you were talking about a version of the Bible, but this is a separate book that was portrayed as a new Bible that came out in 1882. And so
right, by John Newborough.
Yeah, this is I'm going to bet money that I would view it pretty much the same way I view Mormonism and the Book of Mormon as a New Testament of Jesus Christ. I'm not impressed by the Old Testaments of Jesus Christ. I don't know why I would care about a New Testament, because the only thing I care about is actual evidence to show that this is true.
Okay, well, thanks for taking my call. You guys have a great day. I'll tune in once I hang up.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. And I will look more into this Owaspy new Bible, just because it's an interesting little curiosity. But this is a new Bible of the words of Jehovah, and his angel ambassadors, a sacred history of the dominions of the higher and lower heavens on the earth for the past 24,000 years, together with a synopsis of the cosmogony of the universe, the creation of planets, the creation of man, the unseen worlds, the labor and glory of gods and goddesses in the ethereal heavens, with the new commandments of Jehovah to man of the present day. I can't wait.
I've done mushrooms too. I can write my own new Bible. I will
couldn't
say,
write it while I was on shrooms, that's for sure.
One of the things that Eric was talking about, like all these conversations that come up, one of the ones we didn't touch on that I kind of want to now is also the number of people who have the challenge that, well, it's not hurting anybody. So at least astrology isn't like Christianity. It's not hurting anybody. Though, by the way, that's also not true. People who deeply believe it. Astrology is the funny one because it's literally, let me categorize people by arbitrary factors and ascribe to them by these arbitrary factors characteristics which may encourage me to discriminate against them. But I have no idea how that could go wrong when people are like, oh my God, I would never let my daughter date a Scorpio, or I would never date a Scorpio. These arbitrary factors, it's literally like that level is already incredibly bigoted. But I've had people who, in response to some of the videos I did, wrote in and were like, thank you. My parents wouldn't let me do theater because of my star sign. They insisted I go for athletics because of my whole chart. They literally used astrology to control my life. But even if you take all of that away, one of the things we see that is happening is, one, astrology is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And like other multi-billion-dollar industries, it is built in a way to cleverly get you addicted to it. Much like Instagram. It's going to give you feelings of validation and feelings of superiority. But on top of that, it is going to prey upon people because of the style of thing it is. It especially preys on insecure people who need that thing. But it also makes you primed and gullible for other industries. And there is a reason why, if your smartphone history shows that you are checking astrology apps, you're also going to notice when you go to certain websites, people are trying to sell you salt lamps and other shit that also don't work.
Yeah.
The whole concept of like, it's not harmful because no one's committing genocide so far in the name of this thing. And by the way, I think if you got most of humans to start believing in astrology, the genocide would eventually follow. There's a really great episode of The Orville that sort of has a world that does a similar thing to astrology. And it's
spoilers.
I am just saying that. That's what's set up in the first minute. I won't go further than that. And but it's a really good, thoughtful thing. I don't go with the "this isn't harmful" bullshit.
Yeah, I don't either. And yet I know a lot of people who do. And I just want to point out, I understand why people think that. These are the people who, it's like when they see the psychic on the TV and they see at the bottom that for entertainment purposes only, they take that part seriously. This is, I would never pay attention to what they said and try to base my life on it. But they don't understand that there are people who do, and that they may be one of those people. Well, one of the, I talked briefly last night during the debate of a scam where you send out a stock prediction to let's say 1,000 people, and you send out the complete opposite stock prediction to a different set of 1,000 people. And whichever one comes true, you dismiss the other half. And now that group of 1,000 people, you just split them in half, 500, 500, and you give each of those sets of 500 a stock prediction. And then whichever one comes true, you go and you split that in half to 250, and you give each of those, and you keep going down. You can do it so that it comes out to be a perfect multiple of 2, but you get that. At some point, somebody's received multiple correct stock predictions in a row from you. And that's the point at which you say, look, I've given you 7 tips and they've all come true. I have an inside line to this stuff where I'm getting information from these companies before it posts in the stock market. It's illegal, and I unfortunately cannot go and invest my money. But what I'd like you to do is give me a portion of your winnings after this next stock tip because of it. And then you give them the next stock tip. And when they win, you now have a line on the people who can give you a portion of their winnings. And then for each of those that actually gives you the portion of their winning, now you've got somebody hook, line, and sinker. And you can say, I've got this other one, but we're trying to get a bunch of people to invest a bunch of money. And I can get the money in on the ground floor before this stock tip goes live. And boom.
Yeah.
You just made a fuck ton of money. All because you told somebody something that was true multiple times, and yet it was coincidence that it was true each of the time. They just happened to be in the winning group. You can do the same thing and I wanted to do this at one of my magic shows. Unfortunately, it's a little unwieldy, but if you get like a crowd of 1,000 people and you have everybody pull a coin out of their pocket and flip it, boom, everybody who flipped heads stand up, and some, half the audience rises. Okay, now I'll have you flip it again. If it's tails, sit down, flip it again, tails, sit down, flip it again, tails, sit down. You can get somebody in the audience who has flipped it heads 6, 7, 8, 9 times in a row. And you can now honestly say, and everybody there can say, I was at this magic show where one guy flipped a coin, fair coin, and it came up heads 8 times in a row. That's just amazing. And you don't tell them the rest of the story and it sounds amazing. You tell them the rest of the story and it sounds obvious.
Exactly. Yeah. There's somebody in the chat who apparently thinks we're arguing because I've just been told you just schooled me, which is very interesting. But okay. Anyway, we should jump into more calls. Hey, don't forget, in about an hour, I will be on Aron Ra's show, Joseph's Myth. We are reading Joseph Smith's myth. We're reading the Book of Mormon, and that'll be where things automatically go.
I have to correct
after that. Go ahead.
So Shannon just pointed out that she wants to know what I really did on Saturday night because the debate was Friday. Yes, the debate was Friday. I tell you what I did last night. I had a friend or two friends who were in from out of town who came over and had pizza and visited. And so I didn't do anything untoward, and my mind is not going. It just... That debate was so awful that it feels like it was last night.
I, for those wondering, was not invited for pizza. Now Matt's going to mention how he thought I was in Houston and all of this, but those are just facts. Yeah, by the way,
that is a fact.
Anybody who's wondering, because we don't do the reading out of the super chats on this show, but I did come up with a little middle ground. Anybody who's been putting up $10 or more, I've been putting in little boxes down below because some people were, this is the only show we don't do the dedicated super chat section to on Sundays. That way we can dedicate it just to calls for as much as possible. I'm very much looking forward to losing subscribers this week when I post the clip of me saying astrology is harmful. I'm going to clip it and put it on my main channel and just put astrology is not harmless. Stop saying it or something like that is the title. And I'm looking forward to. I'm always amazed at how many people follow my channel knowing I promote skepticism and get real upset when I go astrology is obviously a fraud. It blows my mind. Anyway, go ahead.
No, let's go.
Cool. Let's talk to Angie in California. Angie in California, you are on the line.
Hello.
Hi, Angie.
Hey.
Thank you guys for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Okay, so basically what I'm calling about is I just wanted other people's, your guys' opinion. So the other week, my son woke up and before he went to the bathroom, he walked straight to a table in our living room that we have past loved ones' pictures on. And that table is only for loved ones who passed away. And he goes and grabs a picture and he takes it to the kitchen and he shows my aunt and my grandma at the table. They were having coffee. And he says, hey, I know that guy. That guy was here last night or yesterday. And they're looking at him like, and my grandpa, it was a picture of my grandpa basically. And he's been dead for this November, 21 years. And my son has ASD, and I mean, I'm not saying that is the reason for it, but nobody talks about my grandpa. Him and my grandma kind of have like a little strained relationship, so he's not brought up a lot. I mean, we definitely don't talk to him about him. I've never showed him a picture and said, "This is my grandpa." I don't know how he would grab
a table in your living room.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have like a den, and then we have a living room that my grandma like doesn't let anybody sit in. So it's like one of those little fancy ones that basically nobody can sit in. And it's a remote table in the corner of the room. And
a table
we don't.
Right. But Angie, it's a table he went to grab the photo. It's not a table that wasn't off access to him. Like the answer to your question is, I don't know what actually happened. I have ASD. It doesn't make me see my dead grandparents.
Right.
But we don't know what happened. However, the reasonable explanations, you said it was either yesterday or last night. I assume you should ask, like, if you had follow-up questions, you might want to get more of the story from him. But if it was yesterday, he may have seen somebody who looked like it. I remember when I was a kid, my grandfather died, and then there was this old man who resembled my grandpa walking up to our house, who was visiting from church, and my little sister ran to my mom asking if that was the new grandpa because he looked so much like the old one. Nothing supernatural happening there, but kids, first of all, absorb more than we realize they absorb. They intake more than we realize they intake. They process more than we realize they process. And it very easily could be he either saw somebody or had a dream. I don't think things like sleep paralysis or anything are specific to ASD. I get sleep paralysis every now and then, and I've had conscious dreams before, basically in sleep paralysis, where my eyes were open, but I couldn't move, and I was in my room, and then I saw people in my room because I was still in a state of dreaming, despite the fact that I was intaking sensory information about my room also. I
have questions, though.
Yeah.
Let's assume for a second.
Angie dropped.
She dropped?
Yeah. I hope I wasn't being too aggressive.
Man.
Maybe I was being too dismissive. I don't know. I'm just sitting here going, Angie, call back.
So hopefully it was just a tech issue, but Angie, if you watch this later, here's the thing to ask. Let's assume that your son didn't imagine anything and was in his room and received a visitation of his grandfather. Now, the picture in the notes you said was taken when he was 33.
Okay, Angie's back. I'm going to reconnect her.
Oh, there we go. Cool.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yay.
Sorry about that.
All right. Okay, so I totally, I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm trying to think of everything logical. Like, if he had a dream,
Angie,
if he had a dream about him.
Let Matt go ahead and go. I know you heard my stuff. Matt wanted to follow up with some stuff.
Let's assume that everything that happened happened. The picture was of your dad when he was 33.
My grandpa. My grandpa. It was
when he was 33.
Yeah.
How old was he when he died?
He didn't die at 33. He died at 69.
Sure. So what you're saying, assuming all this is real, is that your grandfather, who died at 69, decided to come back and visit your son and do so in the appearance of him at 33 that matches the picture on the counter, instead of the age he was when he died, or maybe being 20 years old where you wouldn't have had a picture. He came back to specifically only appear to your son in a way that matches the picture, and didn't bother to appear to you or anybody else, your grandmother, your aunt, anybody else, just to your son. Assuming all that's true,
well,
why would that happen?
Well, I'm trying to. Okay, so the reason why I didn't bring me up was because I'm older. Logically, I would see things, or not see things, but I would have more of a reason to create that in my head than my son, I would think, but. Only because I just found it odd that he would grab a picture.
No, that's not even in the ballpark of an answer to my question.
Okay.
I'm saying I'm willing to assume that all of this is real and try to figure out the how and the why and what it could mean. Why on earth would your grandfather choose to appear to his great-grandson only and look exactly like he does in the picture on the table instead of the way he did when he died or in his prime?
I don't know. I have no idea. I was just trying to get your opinion on it. Honestly.
Isn't it more likely that your son has seen that picture and that is what determined what he saw, rather than that your grandfather did something that nobody else has ever been able to do in the history of the world and show up in an image that looks exactly like the picture?
Well, I mean, this picture is it's like a 2-3 inch tiny old Polaroid picture. So for him to grab that picture out of all the ones that we have on that table, I just thought was kind of odd, especially him being 33. Like, well, I just found that odd. Like, I couldn't find any reason for it. We don't talk about him.
Isn't that experience odd, even if the first experience actually happened? If you're saying it's like so unlikely for that photo to have been seen and it's barely there, let's say again, like Matt said, he actually saw your you're dead, but now somehow living again, 33-year-old grandpa. It sounds like you're saying it would be crazy for him to find that photo either way. It's a kid. They have dreams, they have imagination, they have whatever.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just found it odd that he would choose him out of everybody that's more visible.
Does it have to mean anything?
We don't,
Has he seen that picture before? Has he seen that picture before? No, that's bullshit.
No.
I don't believe you.
No, but I can tell you that my son's never.
I don't believe you.
I mean, you don't have to.
No. You said it sitting on a table, and he walked over and grabbed it. That means what prevented him from walking over and grabbing that picture? Would you let me finish? Would you let me finish? What prevented him from walking over and picking up? What prevented him from walking over and picking up that picture the day before when you weren't around?
Because it's on a high table that's about 5 feet tall.
How did he
and
get
it's
to
all
it
the way
right
in the
in front
corner
of you?
A living room.
How did he get it to while he was in front of you?
What was that?
How did he get to it when he walked over and picked it up when you were there?
He walked on the side and got on his hippie. He walked on the side, and I'm thinking he walked on it. I wasn't here. I wasn't here. I wasn't here when that happened. But my grandma said that he just walked straight up to it, came and gave it to her, and said, "Oh, I seen that guy last night."
Listen to me.
And
you're not listening. You're explaining something. Listen to me. I said, what prevented him from walking up and picking up that picture the day before when you weren't there? And now you're telling me he walked up and picked it up that day when you weren't there. How do you know that he hadn't walked up and picked it up the day before when you weren't there?
Well, you're right. I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Then why did you lie to me
Yeah.
and say it wasn't possible?
I didn't say it wasn't possible. I did not say that. That did not come out of my mouth. I did not say it.
You absolutely did. You said he couldn't have done that. Go back and listen, Angie. I'm not in the mood for people who are going to exaggerate stuff. You want to know what I think happened? I don't know what happened. But when I start asking questions about what happened in the hopes of trying to get us towards something and you lie to me, I don't think you're an honest interlocutor. I don't think you actually care about the truth. Oh, and Angie hung up.
Yeah, I think this time she dropped wasn't an accident.
That's fine. I have zero patience for liars.
There's an interesting thing here, though, too, where it seems like when you call in with that sort of those sorts of details that seem to be added as you need them, it seems like you have done things in your mind to make the experience more significant than it is. It seems like you have already talked yourself into it mattering. Because when you're talking about, so crazy that he grabbed this one, it's so, it's just so interesting that it's this and this. Do you have it within yourself to ever accept all of that can just be a coincidence. And some of the things you can drive reasons for the coincidence. He happened to maybe see somebody who looked like the person in the picture that day, and maybe that's what connected him to the photo or whatever. But does it have to be something special happened? Because it sounds to me like Angie talked herself into it has to be something special happened, even though it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. With a 5-foot-high table that he couldn't have reached unless he stood on his tippy toes. And now this happened when I wasn't there, which means now you're taking the word of your grandmother, who might have been talking about him or might have been looking at that picture, who might not be telling you the truth, because clearly lying runs in your family.
Let's talk to, we've got a different Eric, but this Eric is in Oklahoma. I need to update his tag, but
Awesome.
We'll pull him on. Eric in Oklahoma, you are on the line.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Peachy, how are
Good.
you?
How you doing?
Good. Hey, I'm a new listener. I just discovered you guys through my sister, and it got me curious. What would you guys say is your goal for the show?
Oh, well, my goals for the last 17 and a half years that I've been doing this have been pretty straightforward. I want to help educate people to find their way out of superstition, religious belief, pseudoscience, the way that I've been working to get myself free of all of that. I would like to know as many true things and as few false things as possible, which means if I'm wrong and there is a God or there is something supernatural, I would like somebody to actually present evidence of it. And then the third aspect is to essentially end religious privilege, because religions hold an unwarranted privileged position in society.
Yeah, my answer is similar but different enough. I rarely plug this because I'm not needing any attaboys when I'm on these shows, but I'm actually the executive producer of the entire channel. I created the line, and my thought process from the onset was I just want to rip off what other people are doing. No, that's a joke. I consider the line what I hope is at least a deconstruction content factory. I know that when you are leaving religion, there are specific conversations that are tough to have. There are certain new ways of trying to think about things. Even that first call we had with the person who's like, man, I'm really compelled by the confidence of the faith these other people have. I remember what it was like. And so I like that we have a very honest method of engaging with people that isn't just screaming on Facebook, you know, in the comments, throwing Google links, having one-on-ones in real time with anybody can call. It's why I never bring up any pre-qualification I might have to have a conversation. I never try to, there's very few things of which I could be considered an authority over, but I'm never going to bring those in because I want a person like yourself to be able to call in and say, hey, I'm handling this. Now, that said, I'm also waiting for the call where somebody can change my mind. I just don't think it's going to happen because we have a very specific standard as skeptics of the way you change my mind is with evidence, and I do it all the time. My views and my overall interests and mostly, yeah, just views and beliefs have changed a ton over the last 15 years. And starting about 15 years ago, it was because I started to embrace evidence and good reasons to believe things. Took me a while to refine how to identify those things, but that journey started about 15 years ago. And so I want to be able to participate in the healthy deconstruction of people and hopefully not the very polarizing way many people deconstruct. Why do you want to know, Eric? I'm curious.
Both of those are pretty good reasons.
Yeah.
So my sibling and I both grew up in a kind of pretty religious household. We both grew up in a Pentecostal household, which, if you know anything about Pentecostals, they're the crazy Christians. It is the easiest way for me to describe that.
I was a Mormon.
At a very
Come
young
at me,
age,
bro.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess that is a bit worse.
Thanks.
But at a young age, I rebelled against it very strongly and was anti-theist. I absolutely hated religion. I went out of my way to disprove people's religions. I did everything I could to make a religious person, think they were stupid. And she was kind of the opposite. She kind of got into the church a little bit. She didn't go to my parents' church, but she found her own youth group that she liked and she did well with. And over these last couple of years, we both have switched. She has gone more so the anti-theist route, where I'm kind of leaning, I wouldn't say I'm religious, but I'm somewhere between like agnostic and spiritual. Like, I want to think there's something there.
That's not a place.
Death is scary. You know, I want to believe I'll be able to see the loved ones I've lost when I die, but I don't have any proof of it. So I'd say I'm like an agnostic theist, if that makes any sense. Like, I believe there's something there, but I don't have any proof, so I'm not going to change your guys' mind on that, because I'm not sure myself.
So the big thing is that you're describing something where it seems like you're saying, I don't know what I believe, but I'm kind of have hopeful thinking or wishful thinking. And for me,
that's 100% what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, I understand it, but I also don't understand it. Do you not care whether or not your beliefs are true?
Does it matter at the end of the day?
That's the question. To me, I absolutely want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, because I think it absolutely does matter. Mm-hmm. If you run around believing things that aren't true and you don't care that, then you're training your brain to accept nonsense as if it were real. And that has consequences, because you might believe one thing and that one belief doesn't seem to impact you very much at all. But you've trained your brain so that now it will accept other things that will impact you even more. If you think that there is a God, won't that change the way you live your life? Doesn't that change the way you spend your time? Doesn't that change the way you spend your money? Doesn't that change the way you vote?
Would it be a bad thing if it changed the way I live my life? Because a lot of religions try to push you towards the good things get you into heaven, you know, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim.
No, they don't.
Well, not doing bad things get you into heaven, they don't. For the most part.
No, they don't. The religion, name a religion that does not encourage people to do things that are wrong. But it doesn't really matter.
I can't say 100% that people can't misinterpret the information and
it's
use
not a matter
that
of
for harm,
misinterpreting.
because that's happened throughout history.
It's not a matter of misinterpreting. None of this matters because you're not following any religion. You're just making it up yourself. I was pointing out that you're simply wrong. But yes, it does matter if religions convince you or your beliefs convince you to do things that are not based in reality and are harmful. That's a problem. I'm not aware of any religion that will only convince you to do good things.
So it comes down to so you're saying you don't think there's any place in society for religion.
Wow.
Like you don't think religion has taken anybody.
Eric, are you going to answer my question, or are you going to put up fucking straw men of shit I didn't say?
Okay, I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to ask you that question, I suppose.
I'm trying to get an answer to my question, and that's going to happen first. I'm trying to get an answer to my question, and that was going to happen first.
Okay. The question being, do I think it's okay, or are you looking for the religion where they don't encourage anything wrong?
You asked me if I thought it was a problem if a religion caused you to change your life. And I said it would be a problem if it was causing you to change your life in a way that wasn't good. And you seem to suggest that religions only want to point you towards something good, which isn't true.
No, I didn't say that. I don't think they only point you towards good things. And I don't think all religions only point you towards good things.
Okay.
I do think that religions
Hang on, I have to
can
mute
lead
somebody
you down
in
a good
chat who's
path. Like, look
decided
at
to tell me to
prisoners
calm
that
down when they
reform.
should fuck off. But go ahead.
I'm just saying, look at religions, or look at prisoners that reform through prison, and they get deep into religion, and they use that as like a guideline of their morals to be a decent member of society. Now, prison doesn't always work out right, and even those people that use religion to kind of as a guide to get to be a decent person and find their way out of the system.
Yeah, by the way, the statistics on prison are if you go into prison,
it can be a good guideline.
Hey, the statistics on prison do not support what you're trying to suggest here. You go into prison, you're more likely to become a repeat offender, not less. Yep. Yes, people find Jesus in prison. You're scraping
they do it to convince parole boards.
Yeah, and
they do it to convince parole boards. This claim that people go into prison and find some religion and turn out to be better. Yeah, some people might, and it doesn't seem to matter whether they find Jesus or Allah or whatever else. I just did a debate with a Muslim on Friday night where he was pointing out how many lives have been changed because of people converting to Islam in prison. And I hear from Christians all the time about people's lives being changed because they converted to Christianity. Here's the thing. Would people's lives be changed for the better if they converted to a religion that was false, or if they converted to an ideology that was rooted in reality and true?
Exactly.
Not everyone's, but some people can use that as a guideline. I'm not saying it's a large portion of the statistics.
I mean, this is ridiculous. I keep asking questions, and you keep ignoring them to say whatever the hell you want to say.
Yeah, I answered your question. I said not all of them.
No, you didn't. My question could not be answered by the words "not all of them." I give up, Eric.
Repeat your question.
You believe whatever the fuck you want because you don't care if it's true. And you don't think there's a problem with believing things that aren't true. So you keep right on doing that.
Eric, I guess my question
to
you
is...
It's
called gullibility, and it impacts you because regardless of what you think, your brain is designed to make decisions. And you are training your brain to be shitty at making decisions. And you think that that's not going to be a bad thing.
As long as you're not harming anyone else or yourself with your beliefs.
Oh, well, I'm done with your excuses,
matter that you're
Eric.
wrong?
I'm done with your excuses. I just called you out for training your brain to make shitty decisions, and you're going to go, as long as you're not harming anybody. Religions do harm people, both the adherents and the people who are out there who are having their fucking rights violated by religious people voting their own personal agenda onto other people. And if you just want to sit around and make excuses for it, this is not the platform for that.
I'm not trying to make excuses for it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that there are people within, like I'm not using the entirety. Like with the prison example, I'm not using every single prisoner, and that's why I even pointed out.
Eric, the way you're broadcasting it would suggest that there are like significant examples to point to of the opposite, and I still wouldn't agree. But can you show me the non-harmful version of Christianity? Because I doubt you
can. I asked that question 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I doubt we could agree that it even is possible to have a non-harmful version of Christianity. I collab with much less harmful versions of Christian creators on my other channel from time to time, and I love them as people. Brenda from God is Gray, I would marry Brenda from God is Gray because I love her so much as a human being. And yet, I still think her version of Christianity is harmful. So what is the version of Christianity that these people in prison are getting that there is no secular alternative to within reality? Because I know I'm asking questions and should stop to let you listen. I'm actually trying to be a bit more rhetorical and make a point because it sounds like you have very little faith in humanity. And we've talked about, and I don't mean that in faith in the religious way. I'm sorry for the poor choice of terms. But we talked about this last week or the week before. I do have very
little faith in humanity.
I do too, in a lot of ways. However, I don't.
Too much faith in other shit.
That's true also. We talked to somebody in the past who, it was either last week or the week before. I don't believe that there should be a commission of people out there deciding who is worth telling the truth to and who is worth lying to, because it'll be easier for these ignorant, low intelligence or emotional or whatever to control them and make them be good people within society if we tell them lies about their religion. And so when you're talking about people who are reforming in prison, if their God doesn't exist, and I say it doesn't, but we can have that argument a different time, then it wasn't actually that religion or that God that changed them. If Jesus isn't actually the Lord of all or whatever you want to call him, then anybody who changed in the name of Jesus, they actually changed themselves. It happened in their brain without this external thing. And I am not so cynical as to say the only way that we can make that change happen in a person is if we lie to them and tell them it came from a magical place. If we essentially treat adults like they should believe in Santa Claus. I think that's not just wrong, that's offensive as fuck. It's bigoted as fuck. To assume that you are a part of some elite class, or maybe you don't assume this about yourself. maybe you just think other people are more elite and other people should live only with truth, but everybody else who needs it because of their lowly position in society should live with fantasies and then control their lives out of that fantasy. That's insane to me. I'm done.
But I guess the point I was just trying to make with that example was that some people can use religion as a positive guideline. Now, I can definitely point out a lot of the negatives.
Whether or not it was, oh God, go ahead. Sorry, I'll stop.
I feel like you didn't listen to me either because I also addressed that.
Oh, if you're done with me, then hang up.
All right, bitch. Bye.
That was the wrong thing to say, my friend. What a stupid thing to say on this show. Oh my God. I
literally have a show called The Hang Up because I'm famous for hanging up on people. Did you think that wasn't going to happen?
Yeah. Where do you think you are? I was going to address a super chat that came in. Let me figure out which that was that shortcut. Okay. Because it did have a direct question. I do want to say we want to focus on calls. So I do want to, say don't expect this to be that we're going to stop the show, but this question keeps coming up lately, and so I will address it. Sorry to other people. Let me find where it was. So Nicholas had asked why I believe, and I feel like, first of all, you have to understand that everything has nuance, and that when I say this directly, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I do also mean it quite a bit. Hey, Jimmy, why do you believe that new atheists should shut up for the first 4 years? By the way, I say shut the fuck up for the first few years. The lines are busy, so I hope this is an appropriate medium to ask. In the future, don't, just see if you can get a call through. But basically, most people who come out of religion have only learned how to argue poorly. And that doesn't go away the moment that you become non-religious. And so I have noticed a trend, but it isn't universal. Paulogia started his channel almost immediately after his deconversion. And I think Paulogia probably has the best anti-apologetics channel on the platform, right? And I have an anti-apologetics channel, and I'm saying Paulogia is better than me. I mean, we do other things there too, but it's mixed in. However, there is a significant number of people, I will say this also does tend to skew more toward men, who come out of religion and you're understandably pissed. But it's like you want to go and own and take it out on the believers and cosplay being somebody like Matt and hang up on somebody in a Facebook chat. And so you're repeating arguments that you hear somebody make passionately, but you don't actually know how to respond to every follow-up. And then it quickly becomes calling people stupid and all these things that there is an image of atheists out there that we're trying to counter, that we're all just hateful and spiteful and we hate God and all of that stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that people feel that way. And that narrative is often driven by shitty atheists and new atheists. And so all that is to say is if you feel like most of your arguments are what I just mentioned, are that style, maybe just shut the fuck up for like 4 years and you'll get better at it. That's all that is. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We got a handful of calls we need to get to, and we're going to run over time, but we got to get done by 5. But I wanted to say, the frustration here is that, first of all, it always is going to frustrate me when somebody absolutely just flat out acknowledges that they really don't care that much about whether or not their beliefs are true, and they really don't see what the harm is. And then we go through and we start to explain what the harm is. And every question we ask and every example we make is ignored so that you can say something else about, but this could help some people in prisons, or this could help some people this, or this could help some people here. That's not what we said at all. I asked whether or not you cared whether your beliefs are true.
Right.
And you wanted to know what's the harm if they're not true. Cool. It's about training your brain. I'm sorry that your brain has been broken by your sloppy thinking, your lack of skepticism, your absolute paucity of critical examination of anything, and your inability to give a fuck about whether or not it's true.
Right.
You deserve to be hung up on.
But also, let's say somebody went with that argument. Let's say you can make me appreciate the argument of, what if it's doing a positive? Should we leave them with it? If we say that faith is okay for the good beliefs, how do we tell people with the bad ones that it's not? If we say faith is ever acceptable to believe that we should just love one another, that's the reason why you should have faith, is if you have that belief, how do I tell people over there you're being reasonable, but you who are throwing queers off of roofs because of your faith is unreasonable? How do we do that? I don't know of a way. Anyway, you're right. We should jump back into calls. I don't know of a way either. Yeah. I'll push these. Again, super chats are only going to usually appear down in the corner. Please don't now inundate us with questions because I broke the rule. For just this show, every other show during the week, we respond to it in the show. But on Sundays, we dedicate it only to callers. We are talking to Tanner in the Netherlands. We're going to try and make these atheist calls a little bit quicker. But Tanner in the Netherlands, you are on the line.
Hey, Matt and Jimmy, longtime fan, first-time caller. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you. That's very nice.
So I won't take so long, but I saw Matt's debate with Destiny, and I think you did well. But I had a question for you about how to go about talking about the existence of the soul and how that relates to, like, the abortion argument.
Well, I'm on record as saying the soul is the single most obviously dead concept in all of religion. There's not only no evidence for it, there's tons of evidence against it, that this is simply not a true thing. Everything from what we've learned about how the brain works. So bodily autonomy argument, I don't know that it's relevant in trying to have a conversation about the soul. Well, maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Oh, I'm wondering if maybe you couldn't take a more direct, like, proof by negation that the soul can't exist as an eternal thing because of certain facts we know about biology, developmental biology.
Yeah, but biology doesn't address the soul. So to the extent that the soul is falsifiable, I've already gone through all the different ways that I could think of where it could come close to being falsifiable. But you can't disprove. I mean, the soul is ultimately an unfalsifiable concept because you can't test for it. If the assertion is that it's supernatural, we have no way to explore, investigate, or test the supernatural. The best we could ever hope for, or the best we can hope for now, I would say, not ever, is if something supernatural were to produce a detectable phenomenon in reality, we could test that, but we still wouldn't be able to demonstrate that the source of that phenomena is supernatural. And this is the problem that so many have had with the James Randi Educational Foundation Prize and other things like that, is the first step is to demonstrate that there's a phenomenon, that there's a there. And then you demonstrate what that connection is to its proposed source. And for every claim that anybody's made about supernatural things, nobody's even been able to demonstrate a phenomenon. And that's true for a soul too.
Sure. I guess what I'm getting at is in your talk with people like Destiny, he probably doesn't consider the concept of the soul very, convincing, but I guess he considers the personhood argument convincing. So I'm basically saying, why don't we go after that a little more directly? Why that is also, like, incoherent.
I have gone after the personhood argument repeatedly. I even had this argument with Richard Dawkins. I've had it many times. The purpose of that debate and discussion that we did at DebateCon was for me to defend the bodily autonomy argument and for Destiny to show that it was unsound, something he completely didn't even attempt to do. He basically agreed with it and just said it wasn't convincing. And so if the debate was, I stick to the topic of a debate. And so if somebody says, hey, will you debate, the bodily autonomy argument is sound or unsound? Yes. Just like last night or Friday night, I debated, is Islam true? But my opponent didn't show up to debate, is Islam true? My opponent showed up to debate, are there true things about science in the Quran? Which is a completely different debate. So if somebody wants to have a debate with me about the various personhood arguments and stuff like that, I'd be happy to do it. If you go back and watch the debate I did with Christine Kruzlnicki on abortion years ago, we addressed that somewhat. But the thing with Destiny was also supposed to be like, hey, will you guys just sit down and talk for 30 or 40 minutes? No real structure or format. So it was just there for me to defend and address the bodily autonomy argument. Somebody wants me to go after personhood. My take's going to be very similar on personhood to Destiny's take on bodily autonomy, in that I don't see where personhood is relevant to the subject, because, as I pointed out, a 3-year-old is definitely a person, and a 3-year-old does not have the right to use its parent's body without their consent. And so anytime someone says, but a fetus does, then what they are trying to do is grant special rights to a fetus. I don't care if it's a person or not. I don't care if it's in there, as I mentioned before, curing cancer and writing poetry. That still doesn't give it the right to use somebody else's body. But personhood's important for stuff, just not for that.
The only place you could say that the personhood stuff comes in when it comes to abortion is that's still being considered by the people thinking about getting an abortion. The whole idea when we say that these things don't matter and shouldn't be restricted is that it should be between a person and their doctor. And you're going to see people who are seeking abortions often are considerate of that, and they want to know about the development. And there are people who have made decisions on that basis according to their own personal feelings and own personal beliefs. And everybody who is pro-choice is defending a person being able to do that. But as far as where the government should step in and say you can or can't do something, that's what the actual argument between pro-choice and pro-life is. And what people do, it's not as though we mock the people who lose a pregnancy after 7 months and are devastated and have some sort of maybe even funeral for it in some cases. We're not mocking them because that, hey, bodily autonomy, that thing doesn't matter. It didn't have the rights to be in there anyway. It died. What are you so worried about? We understand that there is that emotional pull between people and that they are going to feel emotional ways about their pregnancy, but you don't get to legislate based on that emotional thing. And my honest opinion of like Destiny's personhood position is it basically is the sole position in some ways, that he has this, like, there is this emotional thing that he can't admit in a debate, but that he just still feels very drawn and emotional about this concept of personhood, and that's what that's based on, and he can't let that go, and that informs his position. And I think you see that from a lot of other people.
I think you agree. I'll let you go. Let you talk, Tanner. But I think we kind of got off track because Tanner was really just asking why don't we like more directly attack personhood.
Yeah,
I think you both explained yourselves really well. I understand a lot more now why you do that.
Cool.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad it was useful. Appreciate the call.
All right, keep up the great work. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Sorry, one of the summaries somebody put of the I'm laughing at something in the chat. We'll talk to Russell in Australia. Russell in Australia, how you doing? You're on the line. Oh, Russell, I'm going to beg you from the onset here. Please turn off the show in the background. I don't even know if you've realized we're here and talking to you. Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Russell, what did you want to talk about?
Hey, Jimmy, how you going? And wow, what a privilege to have you two guys to talk to. Actually, I talked to you before, Jimmy, and I wanted to apologise because I insulted your joke about turning the clip around. Do you remember that phone call?
Turning the clip around? No, I don't remember.
Okay, that's all right. And Matt, what a privilege to speak to you, mate. Fantastic.
We'll see if you feel that way at the end of the call. Not everybody does.
That's true.
Yeah. I wanted to. I love the response you guys were just giving to Eric then, and my call's kind of like that. I was raised Catholic and then dropped that when I left school. And when I was a Catholic, I was terrified of dying because whether or not it was heaven or hell or whatever, some sort of perpetual state was just terrifying to me. And then when I dropped all that, I was really comfortable with, because I've watched all the sort of stuff you guys have said about this. Consciousness takes place in the brain. When the brain ceases to function, consciousness dies with that. But I just wanted to ask a question. In a hypothetical situation, if scientifically, under scientific conditions, something could be detected that took a human form, and it was proved to be not a magician or anything like that. See that in that world, that scares the shit out of me. The idea of sort of some kind of perpetual state, whatever it is. And so, what I really want is for one of you guys to just alleviate that fear for me and just tell me I'm worrying about nothing.
Well, all I can tell you is that I don't have any reason to think you're actually worried about something. So I think probably one of my favorite quotes, which isn't, we can't even verify it's a quote, it was attributed to Mark Twain, was where he said that when asked if he was troubled about being dead, he's like, I was dead for 1 billion years before I was born, and it didn't trouble me one bit. I like that because it kind of makes the point of, I didn't experience not being alive before I was born. Or there's no reason to think
Absolutely.
that I did.
I love that one too.
And so there's no reason for me to sometimes going to experience being dead. I tell you what, I don't have the same fear of death that a lot of people have. I've talked about this a lot over the last year because 1 year ago this month, in 6 days, it will be exactly 1 year to the date from when I had a triple bypass heart surgery. And people around me were worried, but they were worried that they were going to lose me. I wasn't worried because I knew that, first of all, I was going in to see the experts. I knew what the science showed my likelihood of surviving was. And I also knew that at that point, I had done everything that I could do from a practical, pragmatic standpoint to have this go as well as possible. I'd followed their instructions. I showed up. And then they put me, when they were getting ready to put me under anesthesia, I was on a table, perfectly calm and content. And I knew that there is some chance that this was the end of me. I will never wake up. And I woke up the day after the surgery was over. And I don't remember a lot of the stuff that happened right off the bat. I do remember I flipped off a nurse because I was intubated and I wanted ice for my lips, and they were like, you can't have ice. And of course I flipped them off and they laughed. I mean, when you're groggy, you're more likely to do stuff like that. But at no point was I terrified of dying. You know what I was terrified of? Suffering. Because suffering is real and suffering is something you experience. And if I had, for example, had another massive heart attack at home and suffered agonizingly all the way up until I died, that would be an awful way to go. You know what's a really good way to go? Walking in, taking off your clothes, putting on a gown, having somebody shave your legs, having the person you love sitting there next to you holding your hand. They're clearly worried about you. You laugh, they laugh, and they wheel you in and knock you out. If I never woke up again, I wouldn't have been trouble. I mean, there would have been no me to trouble, but it was at least content that would have been a fine way to go and better than other options. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to experience the dying thing, but being dead isn't something I can experience. And so I genuinely don't worry about it at all.
Sure. And I am completely with you on everything you said there. And I love saying that to my son when he talks about death. I use that you were dead for all that time. You didn't exist for all those years. There's more of it coming. Don't worry about it. But in a hypothetical situation, if under scientific conditions they could detect not only an anomaly, like let's just say hypothetically they went to like one of these supposedly haunted places or something like that, and they detected something that had to be an anomaly, and also took the form of a human, would that make you? Because I'm really comfortable with all the stuff that you said. That's how I feel, and I'm really comfortable and at peace with that. But if there was something that took a human form, what the fuck could that be? And what could it be us? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, of course, that that we would survive death in any way. But if that was detected, what would you think?
Okay. Here's where we find out whether or not you're going to leave the show appreciating me as a host or not. Russell, did you seriously call in to suggest what if, hypothetically, they showed that there was something like a ghost? Would that change my mind about my perception of death? Of course it would. I don't know what it would change it to, but I don't sit around. I spend less time sitting around wondering what happens if they prove a ghost or a god than I do what it's like to be dead. Because at least being dead, while it's not something I'm going to experience, is something that is actually true. My grandmother is dead. That's a fact. I don't think she's experienced anything. But if you're going to take and say, okay, I don't have to worry about being dead anymore, but now I'm going to sit around and worry about what if someday they hypothetically demonstrate that there might be a ghost. It sounds to me like you're looking for something to worry about, and you should knock it the fuck off.
I mean, generally the answer to any skeptic is, what if they proved such and such, would you believe it? Yes. Literally, like, if they prove anything. Now, that said, it wouldn't be right away. It wouldn't be at first. There's a process. If somebody just showed me this ghost evidence and it even looks extremely compelling, and anybody who already is maybe on the fence is going to probably jump straight to it, doesn't mean I'm there yet, because my first thoughts are going to go to, okay, what did we do to eliminate the possibility of a hologram? What did we do to eliminate the possibility of such and such, such and such, such and such? Proving that it is going to have a lot of work, what you say it is, because I got a whole lot of things that I'm going to want to see that it is not, when there are so many other explanations for it. But as a skeptic, if you say, what if we proved ghosts exist, would you believe in them? Obviously.
And for clarity, when I say you should knock it the fuck off, I'm talking about for your own mental well-being.
Yeah.
Stop torturing yourself with thoughts of shit that nobody's proved yet.
Yeah.
And I love that, guys. See, you did exactly what I wanted to be done there. Two things that now I feel better, and I got schooled by Dillahunty. So you just made my day. That was brilliant.
Apparently I did earlier too.
Much.
I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Russell. I appreciate it.
See you, Russell.
Okay. No worries. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.
That's it, man. You got a whole nother show to go do, but tell us what's going on, Jimmy, because Sunday, we've now started our week. We had Friday and Saturday where we were kind of off, even though you did work and I didn't. But we got the Sunday show. We're cranking stuff out. What's going on with Skeptalk and HOSTility and the Hang Up? And yes, tell us.
Yes. So right now, this week's HOSTility is in flux, which actually happened the week before. We've been having some, I almost think we might just delay it and do a relaunch of HOSTility in January, because too many annoying things have happened, and a lot of it's because of the holidays and the time of year. Last week, literally a blizzard knocked it out for our guest host. But tomorrow, Shannon Q will be on Skeptalk. She's doing a special psychology-themed episode of Skeptalk. So when it comes to the human brain, human mind, how it works, that is where her expertise lies. And that is the sort of point of Skeptalk. We're going to generally have people who have sort of relevant accolades to whatever they're speaking on. So we've had biologists. I'm hoping that we can get Andrew on there soon so we can do some legal episodes. But yeah, so far, an amazing show. If you haven't catched Skeptalk already, the reviews are in and they're all tremendous. And then HOSTility, look forward to that. I believe for sure, at least next week, we'll be with the guest who on Twitter goes by Beat the Cult. And she's awesome. And then we're going Wednesdays. The hang up is Phil, right?
Yes. This week's hang up is Phil Ferguson. We are going to talk about whether or not crypto is a religion. And we've added some conversation topics about NFTs since our former president has decided to fully embrace his role in what seems to be the sequel to The Boys and selling an NFT.
It's wild. And then on Thursday, Katy Montgomerie will be joined by somebody. they're still deciding who it is. I think it's between student Dr. Ben and somebody else, dependent upon Ben's schedule as a doctor in training. So that's what
Ben was here yesterday.
Ben was in town having pizza with you last night. Is that?
Yes, Ben was in town having pizza with us last night. He's doing the Atheist Experience literally right now.
Oh, we're encroaching.
You need to go do Aron's show.
That's right.
And I'm going to go watch that. I'm
going to put that link in the live right now. So come with me. We're headed to Aron Ra's channel. We're going to be reading the Book of Mormon. I think we're on 2nd Nephi chapter 10 or so. It's good stuff. It actually it is something that I had to miss the last 2, and I'm really glad to be back. So we will see you all here soon, same time next week with, I think next week is Christmas. Have we decided? I'm going to do it. I'll be on next week, and I'll tell you, we'll find out who else is. Awesome.
I'll be on with you.
Cool. I'm open to doing like a really long marathon show, but we'll talk about that after.
Let's do the 12 hours of Christmas.
Oh man, I was thinking 8, but
I'm not gonna give you. I'm not doing anything special for Christmas this year, but I'm not going to give you 12 hours. But we will do a show next week.
We'll have you back.
Partly because I love the audience, and there are people out there who don't like Christmas, who aren't celebrating Christmas, or who can't, or who may be away from family. Come hang out with us. Let's have a fucking fun time next week. If we get calls, we get calls. If not, we play games.
We had over 2,000 people at our peak today. The Christmas show will still be a success if it's us and 50 people. I know it's going to be more than that, but I that's the exact reason I want to do it too. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I'm Jimmy Snow. This is Matt Dillahunty. This has been the Sunday Show on the Line. We'll see you here again tomorrow, hopefully.